Here we go. Part 2 of Matt Williamson's wide receiver rankings. We're doing fantasy rankings for the 2024 season, and it is a stacked group of receivers. Part 2, tons of depth. And who are those sleepers? Some league winners in there for you. Coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. We love our everydayers, and we appreciate it when you hit that subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this podcast. Today's episode brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Terms apply. Okay, here we go. Executive decision. We decided we pushed the mailbag back this week.
Yeah.
And I hope everyone enjoys their holiday, and we'll have a little mailbag for you to end our broadcast week. But we're going to go back-to-back wide receiver episodes instead of splitting them up. And we've got part 2 of our wide receivers. We did the top 20 yesterday, the elites. There's still some pretty elite guys out there, though, Matt. As
really are.
21 until I don't know how many guys we're going to talk about. You got 90 of them listed. I'm going to drop it on the screen for those of you watching on YouTube, what our top 20 was, and go through it really quick just to remind you where we're at before we hit part 2 and number 21 on the rankings. And so pull it up on the screen here. It's Tyreek Hill, not Justin Jefferson, number 1 for Matt Williamson. CD Lamb 2, Jamar Chase 3, expected big, huge season there from Matt about Jamar Chase. You can go back and hear the reasonings and the breakdowns of all these guys on yesterday's episode. Justin Jefferson 4, that is the top tier, the elite of the elites. And then you got Amon-Ra St. Brown 5, Garrett Wilson, A.J. Brown, Devontae Adams, Puka Nacua, Drake London in the top 10, followed by Chris Olave, Jalen Waddle, Nico Collins, Mike Evans, Marvin Harrison, the rookie, DJ Moore, Brandon Ayuk, Michael Pittman, another rookie, Malik Neighbors at 19, and Devontae Smith rounding out the top 20, Matt, of your early 2024 fantasy football wide receiver rankings.
There's some serious talent in those 20 names. You know what I mean? All shapes and sizes, but a lot of them are in their prime. You know, now we're going to start to get guys maybe are showing a little bit of age or number 2 on their team or quarterback questions or offensive coordinator questions. But still, this next 20, a couple of them are going to be, you know, top 10 for sure. You know what I mean? Like it looks like it's impossible to break out that break into that top 20 list that you just showed, but it's going to happen. And there's a lot of talent at this position, but you can't wait too long. I mean, I haven't done any best ball drafts yet, but these guys are flying off the board, and you don't be left just, holding the bag saying, oh, I'll end up with somebody eventually, because they go quick, but there's a lot of interesting names.
Yeah, a lot of interesting names. And, if you go like running back, tight end or something early in your draft, you're going to have to draft a ton of wide receivers, and there's still going to be some names for you. But these big names are going to go fast for sure. And we'll go to number 21. And by the way, if you're watching on YouTube, I'll throw the whole list on the screen at the end so you can kind of visualize it all. But here we go. Top 20 in the books. Let's go 21. And that is your guy in Pittsburgh, George Pickens. And I'm sure you expect now that he's the number 1. There's zero. Who's the competition for targets? It's the running game, and it's Freiermuth, right?
Yeah, I think Freiermuth, as it sets up now, will be the second leading receiver. I also think that they, Niners aside, I think they could make a trade still for a receiver of note, between now and opening day. But Wilson's a great deep ball thrower. That's Pickens' specialty. He took a big step forward in his second year. I'm expecting another step forward. Offensive coordinator change, I think, is a good thing. I really think getting Matt Canada out is really the beauty of it. But we also have seen Arthur Smith not feed his horses as much as we'd like. But I don't know how Pickens doesn't have a ton of targets this week.
Yeah, and the big question for him and how high he should go in drafts and how crazy he could go this year as far as fantasy is, the volume and how much he's going to get peppered with targets in the short to intermediate area. And that's the exciting thing for Pickens, because the big plays and the touchdowns should probably be there for him as much or more than before. But if you can just round out a couple of more targets and those, some slants and maybe move him around a little bit to get those matchups for him, that we're talking about a big time contributor there.
Yeah, and the numbers actually back it up from last year, because Deontay Johnson missed substantial time, and the games that he wasn't out there, Pickens got those slants and comebacks and those type of things too. So I got to think he's getting 8 targets a game.
DK Metcalf is next, another beastly wide receiver. He's kind of the opposite, where he's got more competition for targets in-house now with Jackson Smith-Njigba, who we'll talk about. Tyler Lockett's still going there. And a new offense, while they're probably going to run a lot of 3 wide receiver sets, I'm guessing it's probably not going to be quite as extensive and as fast as it was in college in that offense, with the University of Washington offensive coordinator coming over now for the Seattle Seahawks. But DK Metcalf is still a beast, and it's just a question of how much volume he's going to get.
Yeah, I have nothing else really to add except for something you threw in, I think, on our running back show is these last couple of years, Seattle has been at the bottom of the league in terms of number of snaps run throughout the season. And I think that's bound to change, right? I mean, I would think that they start running plays at a normal level.
I mean, could they go from last to literally first in plays ran? It's possible.
It's possible. Yeah, it's possible.
Deebo Samuel coming in at 23, the second 49ers wide receiver. And
any qualms with that?
No, see, the thing I love about a Kyle Shanahan offense is when it comes to fantasy, you can wait and you get the second guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I always want to have the backup running back, and now Christian McCaffrey's been a cyborg and hasn't gotten hurt, but almost every year until Chris McCaffrey showed up, 49ers running backs get hurt. And if you have the second or third guy, they go crazy, and they're 5.5 yards per carry, right? And it's kind of the same at wide receivers. So after Ayuk's rookie year, you thought, oh, he's going to go huge in year number 2. He started going earlier in drafts. Deebo Samuel was later. Deebo Samuel was a huge bargain, a league winner, and he went crazy and became the wide back Deebo and had the best year of his career. So then everyone's chasing Deebo. He's the early pick. And then Brandon Ayuk last year has 1,300 yards and hugely efficient with Brock Purdy throwing on the football. There's enough balls to go around because of the efficiency in that offense. Unless one of the guys is hurt, I don't think they're going to get all the targets. But to me, it's like, okay, Brandon Ayuk, his efficiency might come down. Deebo, I think, could have a year that's closer to 2021 than 2023.
Okay. My only real question for you on that is, do you think he gets 30 carries this year? 20?
Well, Kyle Shanahan's talking like he's going to give some breathers to Christian McCaffrey. We'll see if it actually happens, when the bullets are flying, because Kyle Shanahan doesn't like to hold guys back, and Christian McCaffrey never wants to come off the field. But I think Deebo is going to be part of that plan. And I think he'll get just as many touches as far as the ground game goes as last year. But I think he, again, everyone's in the best shape of their lives. He looks like he's in phenomenal shape. I think he's heard about how he might be traded, and this might be his last year. I think he's going to be pretty motivated. It's almost like an every other year thing. And I think I want to have Deebo this year.
And I don't know that I'd save him if I'm the Niners either.
Right.
Let's use him.
He's going to get the ball a lot, and he gets the ball forced to him more than Brandon Ayuk does. And I think that's part of Ayuk's thing is he's like, oh, man, if I got the targets the CeeDee Lamb got, I could go crazy and get $35 million per year. So I think that's kind of where the negotiations are, because Brandon Ayuk's almost an afterthought. He's kind of the backside player in the offense. And Deebo, they forced the ball to him.
Yeah. No, I think that's well said.
Who's next for you? 24.
Amari Cooper. I mean, he seems to get slept on, but he's a really good football player. Attacks all levels of the field well. The Watson-Cooper relationship, I don't quite understand or have enough, really to go off of, but solid number 2 for fantasy.
Cooper Kupp coming in at number 25. And I had a similar conversation with you yesterday in the top 20 rankings about the Deebo Ayuk thing and about the Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua thing. I think I'm kind of laying in the weeds, and I'm cool with where Puka and Brandon Ayuk are going to go. But I think versus ADP, I'll have a lot of Deebo and a lot of Cooper Kupp on my teams.
Totally agree. I mean, I can. He's a little older than you think, and injuries, but I mean, he's not that far from having the triple crown either. So, and he also has a great relationship with Stafford.
Right. And when everybody's healthy, I think that it's just as likely that Amari Cooper is going, or Cooper Kupp, excuse me, back-to-back Coopers there.
Yeah.
Cooper Kupp is going to be featured as much as Puka Nacua. So
yeah, I don't have a great grasp on that either.
I think it's a coin flip in who gets more targets this year between those two. So I'll take the guy who goes second.
Yeah, especially for the price. And I don't know if I'm high or low on Kupp right now compared to consensus.
T. Higgins coming in at number 26. If you're expecting big things from Jamar Chase, T. Higgins in a contract year now, going to play on his franchise tender. Is he in for a lesser year if more targets are going to Jamar Chase?
I don't necessarily think so. I mean, I think the fact that Boyd's not there is a big piece of the pie. Higgins wasn't close to himself when he was on the field last year. Tons to play for. I think he's a pretty solid pick. I could see 10, 12 touchdowns.
Yeah, I like T. Higgins this year as well. Tank Dell, I'm not sure what to do about. You've got him here at number 27. I don't know how many games he's going to miss because of injury to start the year. And there's a lot more competition for targets now with Stephon Diggs in-house.
Yeah, I'm looking at the pecking order like Nico, Dell, Diggs, and I think Diggs is kind of going to be the Keenan Allen type, move the chains dude. But this is subject to change if Dell has bad injury, info coming out.
Where is Stephon Diggs in your rankings? We'll get to that next. Still a ton of fantastic players here and some deep sleepers as well for your fantasy leagues. I'm looking at 93 players on Williamson's list. At the end of the list, he doesn't even have them numbered and ranked anymore. But we're trying to figure out who your league winners will be later in the drafts at wide receiver. And there's a lot of candidates for it coming up next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by GameTime. GameTime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier all summer long. Prices on the GameTime app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. Talking killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. GameTime takes all the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. Last-minute deals, you can save up to 60% off buying those last-minute baseball games, any sporting events, concerts, comedy shows, theater events near you. You see the view from your seat, panoramic. You move your phone around. You know exactly what it's going to look like as if you're sitting in that seat, and all-in pricing. Love this feature. No surprise fees at checkout. See that total up front. It's my biggest frustration when buying tickets to any of these sports, comedy, theater, concerts, any events you're going to. Take the guesswork out of buying those tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We are on to number 28, is it? So take that 27. Terry McLaurin coming in at number 28. Terry McLaurin, just kind of like clockwork, 1,000-yard after 1,000-yard season. Could a more dynamic quarterback potentially raise his value? Is there more there for him, or do we kind of just know exactly what Terry McLaurin is and we can set our watch to it?
I'm always thinking there's more for him because I think he's a better football player than fantasy player. And it was like a month ago, I tweeted out all the folks that he's had to catch passes from over his career. It's getting pretty ridiculous. And I would hope that Daniels at least stabilizes that to some degree. But sort of like the Seattle conversation, Kingsbury offenses run a lot of plays. I mean, I'm paying more attention to that this year of who do I think could be the teams that run a lot of plays. And Washington could be pretty high on the list.
And they could be a team that's kind of coming from behind. I don't know if anybody expects them in the new regime to just, be a juggernaut team right out of the gate, but there could be some growing pains with a rookie quarterback as well. So kind of, in this area, you just love it. And he's a good football player and should be the number one receiver. And so I think you got him ranked in a really good spot here. Number 28, Terry McLaurin. Deontay Johnson coming in at number 29 in a new situation.
Also in a contract year, people don't seem to pay attention to that, but he's a great route runner. It has to be it's not that much different than Pickens, honestly. I mean, he's so much better than the other options with all respect to Thielen. Quarterback situation is not great. They're going to be losing a lot, but I mean, I think he's, another 1,000-yard type season for him.
We're going to start grouping these together a little bit.
Yeah, we got a
now
lot
we're
of
getting
names.
to number 30 overall in Matt Williamson's rankings. I mean, still tons of names that, I mean, Stephon Diggs popping up here. So we got Chris Godwin, Stephon Diggs, Keenan Allen. Those are household names and past league winners in fantasy football leagues. You got them 30, 31, and 32.
Kind of all look at them as older slots. You know, I mean, where are they at this point of their career? Still have hope, but they're not super dynamic. Yeah, that's the neighborhood. I mean, I don't know that any of them are going to win the league for you anymore.
I still like Diggs as far as fantasy goes over Tank Dell. But
I get it.
Clearly behind Collins, just because of the opportunity and the how much he'll demand the ball, and literally, I think, demand the ball, moving him around in situations where he's, you know, your third down weapon, and Tank Dell feels like the extra guy where it's like, okay, we're gonna scheme up a play for Tank Dell here. But I think just through the natural progression of the game, I just see more targets in Stephon Diggs' future this season, for especially the injury for the Houston Texans. And, you know, Keenan Allen, kind of a similar situation with the Bears, slot guy all day. He's going to get a ton of targets over the middle of the football field. Chris Godwin, don't really know what to think about. Still a good football player, but you got Mike Evans over there too. So interesting group of, you know, older players that still have something to offer for your fantasy teams.
Yeah, and I don't think any of them are going to fall off a cliff or anything like that. And I think we mentioned this when we were talking about Caleb Williams in the quarterback show. His whoopee absolutely could be Keenan Allen. He could feed him over and over and over, and I wouldn't blame the rookie one bit.
33 through 40 here. Some young players, some second-year guys, some third, fourth-year guys. Like this is an interesting group, and a couple more veteran names to throw out there. So number 33, I think a lot of people's favorite big, huge breakout player that jumps into the category of potentially an elite in Baltimore. That's Zay Flowers at 33. You got Calvin Ridley, new face, new place at 34. Marquise Brown, 35. Christian Kirk, 36. Jackson Smith-Njigba, 37. DeAndre Hopkins, 38. Christian Watson, 39. And his teammate Jaden Reed at 40. So I get the feeling you just don't know what to do with the Green Bay Packers wide receivers.
To some degree, but actually the more I think about Green Bay receivers, I think I want Dontayvion Wicks, and I keep moving him up, but I know we haven't gotten there yet, but I actually believe more and more that I study him, he has a chance to be their number one. So I'm not buying super heavy into Watson and Reed. I like them. I'd rather own Love, I think, than all the above. The guy I wanted to bring up, though, of this 10 or so was JSN. I mean, we talked about Washington featuring University of Washington, featuring three really good receivers, more volume in Seattle this year. And I loved them a year ago, and I don't want to go off that. I don't want to stray from that evaluation. I thought he was quite good as a rookie too. I mean, I don't think he did anything wrong.
Yeah, and I'm kind of big game hunting at this point in drafts.
Yeah.
We talked about it yesterday, and sometimes it's a failure for me in fantasy football as I'm, you know, scouting the player rather than the situation sometimes. But, you know, I see Zay Flowers at 33, Jackson Smith-Njigba at 37, and I would probably want to draft either one of those guys over someone like Chris Godwin, just in case that they do hit that other level, and, you know, they're likely to have similar production anyway projected. And so I'd be excited about that. And Jackson Smith-Njigba should be on the field a lot. And even with Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, I'm sure he'll start those games with three wide receiver sets. I think is the way that they're going to go, and just running a lot more plays. So opportunities from a lot of them. And I don't know that Tyler Lockett's done necessarily either. You've got him at number 45. We're not going to be able to name every name on the list. So Tyler Lockett at 45 is third of those Seahawks wide receivers, but he's still playing some pretty good football too. So I don't really know what to expect. So maybe there's another one of those teams where it's like, okay, Packers, I'm going to take the third guy. I'm going to take Dontayvion Wicks, although he's climbing up boards because everyone kind of sees how good he was. I'm going to take the third guy. If it's Tyler Lockett, if it's JSN, I'm going to take the second guy in San Francisco. If it's Deebo Samuel, I'm going to take the second guy between Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. I think that's the way I'm going to play it with a lot of these teams, because I think the second guy, the third guy, could be the first guy too.
And even Houston, I mean, we seem pretty firm that Nico's one, but he's expensive in fantasy too. You know, like I might not end up with any of those guys in Houston, or maybe just Wicks from Green Bay. And, you know, JSN, I think, could be, I don't think it's crazy to say JSN leads Seattle in targets this year.
It shouldn't shock people. And it definitely
right.
How about this guy? Ladd McConkey at number 41,
Talk about leading the team in
receiver on
targets.
the list, talking about leading the team in targets. I don't know how many targets are going to go around in the new Harbaugh-led Los Angeles Chargers. I'm sure they're going to run the football, but you got a top 5 quarterback in the NFL throwing footballs. Love me some McConkey as a rookie.
And I definitely want to see more. I'd like to hear some camp reports. I don't want to hear that he's the third guy and only playing in the slot. I would drop him dramatically, but I just think the competition is terrible.
Opposite situation we were talking about in Seattle. They might not have a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. So if he's the third guy, they might be going big a lot and trying to run the football, and then he'd be kind of an afterthought.
Right. I just think he's probably in line as July starts here to be the leading receiver on the team, and he's a good quarterback.
All right, next, let's finish it up. We've gone through 41 in Matt Williamson's rankings. We're going to get to some more sleepers here, and we've got about 50 more names on the list to choose from in Matt Williamson's 2024 wide receiver fantasy football rankings. All right, some more young players that, I mean, we're talking about guys who could be league winners for you here, potentially. Jordan Addison coming in at number 42. You got Brian Thomas Jr., rookie wide receiver in Jacksonville at 43. 44, Cam Sutton. We talked about Tyler Lockett at 45, and then Romo Dunze at 46. Jameson Williams is an interesting one at 47 as well because of what he could be. Has that ship sailed with Detroit? We'll finish up the top 50 here. Brandon Cooks, 48. Mike Williams, 49. And then another rookie, Keon Coleman, at 50.
And pull back the curtain. I mean, this is the area that I'm going to scrutinize a lot more. These guys will be changing quite a bit. Like Brandon Cooks is so boring, but they're projected right now to run the most plays in the league. They throw a ton. He's the number 2 in Dallas. So like Ferguson and Cooks are really good fantasy players. I mean, who's going to compete with those guys if they throw a ton? And I know it's not exciting. Jameson Williams scares me, but he's got great opportunity. I could absolutely be ahead of the curve, too early. I mean, I mentioned before, one of my fantasy redraft problems is I'm a year too early.
Yeah.
Brian Thomas might scream that, is Keon Coleman ready to step up? Is McConkey ready to step up? I don't know. That's a tough one.
It is tough with the rookie wide receivers. Romo Dunze is one injury away from, potentially being and they're like buddies. He's buddies with the quarterback too, but rookie quarterback, rookie wide receiver. How often does rookie quarterback, rookie wide receiver pay huge dividends? It doesn't happen
next year
that often. Although last year with Tank Dell and CJ Stroud, that was
good point.
It was kind of fun, but it's a rarity. It is a rarity. It's hard to project those types of things. By the way, Brandon Cooks, CeeDee Lamb's not signed and not up to camp. So Brandon Cooks might be the number 1 by week 1 if this thing doesn't get figured out, or, a slow start for Lamb because of missing a big portion of camp or something like that too. So Brandon Cooks, always sneaky for your fantasy leagues. If you take a lot of lottery tickets early, you might want to go Brandon Cooks a little bit later.
Yeah, you might be starting him every week from like week 3 on when you realize he just produces.
Another rookie here at number 51, Xavier Worthy. I love Worthy. I would probably have Worthy just because of who his quarterback is and the team he plays on. He might not have quite the opportunity on paper of Keon Coleman right in front of him, but for some reason, something about Worthy and his landing spot and them trading up to get him has me kind of excited for him. But that might be me doing the thing that I do, and he's not that good of a fantasy football play this year.
Yeah, he worries me just from a boom bust standpoint, but there's going to be booms for sure. I wonder, if they go a lot of 12, a lot of 13 personnel, will Worthy and Marquise Brown ever be on the field together? Not ever, but will they often be on the field together? Maybe. I just like to get those answers beforehand. And Rashee Rice is coming up here. Is he going to be suspended? I'm assuming he is.
I assume there's going to be some suspensions there for Rashee Rice. And you've got him third. You got him a few players later here at number 54. And you got Josh Downs and Jahan Dotson at 52 and 53. In between. But Marquise Brown is not a big speed bump to me either. Short-term contract. They kind of wanted that style of player and then went and got Xavier Worthy. It tells me that their long-term plan is Worthy, not Brown. Now, maybe Brown's a veteran player, more ready to play. Xavier Worthy just has a little bit more juice as far as a run after catch ability and more ways to have fun with in that offense, whereas Brown is kind of just going to be the X guy maybe, and you hit him on big plays if it's there, but if it's not, Xavier Worthy I think has a bigger opportunity. So I do like Worthy, but there's a lot of question marks in that offense with the best quarterback in the league. So if you hit right, you're kind of ahead of the game as far as your Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver choices in fantasy football.
And there's a lot of those in this neighborhood. I mean, could Curtis Samuel really blow up being a feature role in Buffalo? Or is Coleman the big body guy that's going to work out of the slot and in the red zone? Boy, I'm having a hard time figuring out the pecking order of some of these wide receiver rooms. And even like Mike Williams. I mean, is he going to get a lot of single coverage and deep balls, from Aaron Rodgers? That doesn't sound bad either.
It doesn't sound bad, but at the same time, it could be so few and far between that you're not even like starting him when he does have his big week where he scores 2 touchdowns.
Yeah. I mean, he's definitely got some of that too.
Yeah. So by the way, 55-60 here. Jacoby Myers, 55. Curtis Samuel, 56. Rashid Shaheed, 57. Jerry Jeudy, 58. Jalen Polk, 59. Dontayvion Wicks, 60. I love Dontayvion Wicks coming out of the draft. I like his situation. I think he's going to be a starter for the Green Bay Packers, but I don't know. He might be such a fantasy darling that he might climb to the point where I don't draft him, even though he's the guy I would have, put everything behind coming into the fantasy football season. So we'll see what Dontayvion Wicks ADP ends up being. I don't want to push it up too high. Jerry Judy's an interesting one because they paid him like somebody who's going to get targeted in Cleveland.
Yeah, I mentioned. I mean, with the Chubb situation, the Judy trade, it sure seems like they're trying to throw the ball more in Cleveland and make it Watson's the focal point. We'll see if that works or not. I thought Judy was vastly overrated in his time at Denver, but it doesn't matter if, to your point, they don't agree. They're giving him money. So he's going to be on the field a lot and probably sees a lot of single.
Okay, you got 93 names listed. You stopped ranking by the time you got to actual 70. There's not even numbers next to the names here. But as far as the end of this group, 61-93 of the names I see. Mm-hmm. Let me know which guys you like the best in the sleeper category in fantasy football this year, past some of the names we've talked about in the top 60.
Could Rashad Bateman or Marvin Mims actually make a case to be their team's leading receiver? It's asking a lot. Especially
it is asking a lot. Like the ship has sailed for me. Like I'm not going to probably touch Rashad Bateman, even though they showed him some love. I would have loved to see him in a different situation. Jameson Williams, I'm just not going to buy into it.
I'm not.
If they're free and on the waiver wire, maybe. But I'm not going to spend draft cash on those guys. Marvin Mims,
he was never really for me.
Yeah, I thought he was a bad draft pick. How high?
I did too.
But it's like, okay, they like him and they're going to give him the ball. And it's like, okay, maybe. But, and again, if he's cheap, you don't have to spend a lot. I understand it. And you're collecting sleepers. Then I get it there too. I kind of like Troy Franklin because he's got his college quarterback throwing to him there, 3rd round pick, and he's dynamically fast. He could leapfrog Marvin Mims really quick there in the pecking order in Denver. So I would probably I would lean Franklin where you're going to get him over Marvin Mims because people are touting Mims like he's the breakout this year. And I'm not necessarily buying in on that. You know who I like as much as any of the names we talked about? He's the last name on your list. A.T. Perry. I love A.T. Perry.
That's your guy. Yeah.
He's tall. He can get open. He's phenomenal in the red zone. He tracks the football. I don't think he's going to lead the team in targets or catches, but I think he's gonna be a useful player and maybe a better football player than a fantasy guy. But I like me some A.T. Perry as well. So I'm glad to see him here on your list, even though he's at number 93 at the very bottom.
I got another sneaky one I just want to make sure we talk about is Demarcus Robinson with the Rams, because he really produced quite well, especially at the end of the season. And I know he's looking like he's the 3rd receiver there, which is 100% true, but is Kupp going to last the whole season? It's a good offense, and they gave him money. He's been pretty productive over the last couple of years. A guy like DeMarcus Robinson or even Darnell Mooney, if he's the true number 2 in Atlanta, these guys have had fantasy success before. And I'm talking about like the last round of your draft, of course.
Right. Yeah. Or waiver wire, and you put them on your watch list. I'm going to bring the full list here up on the screen for those of you watching on YouTube, so you can see the whole rankings here. Khalil Shakir, an interesting name for me. And I would kind of bet, like, if you're looking at fantasy production, Keon Coleman is obviously the rookie. He was a high draft pick. He could be a beast down the football field. He could be a beast sort of as a as a red zone weapon, but he'll be kind of touchdown dependent. And then will his quarterback kind of steal those touchdowns? And then I look at Khalil Shakir, who's going to be the slot guy, who I think is going to be more highly targeted. So in PPR leagues, I think Khalil Shakir is that sneaky play for you in Buffalo in that wide receiver group.
I mean, even a Luke McCaffrey, if he's the number 3 there and they're always losing, he may end up with 8 targets a game. I mean, there's a lot of these situations that we all need to monitor, and I'll help you, of course. I mean, I'm going to be changing them all the time, but after week 2, there might be, wow, McCaffrey has 16 catches in his first 2 games. Pick him up, like jump on these guys,
You have AD Mitchell down here, and you have him right ahead of Quentin Johnston.
These are in no order. If they don't have a number,
okay.
So my process said this. My process is put every name down that I possibly can, type them in, and then just start going one hill. And then when I get bored, right, I'm like, I'm not wrecking those guys.
So basically, after like 65, 70, they're just their names, and those guys are in a category of sleeper. Pick the guy you like. AD Mitchell's interesting. I don't know about rookie wide receiver, second-year quarterback.
Yeah.
How much opportunity is going to be there for him? But if he hits, he could hit absolutely huge. And then Quentin Johnston's another one of those guys where it's like, man, he was so bad as a rookie. Is it going to be that much better for him this year? Is he even going to be on the field, or is Lad McConkey going to be the starter in 2 wide receiver sets, and Quentin Johnston's a backup? So I don't know. There's some interesting names down here. Odell Beckham's on the list down here.
Yeah. I mean, history shows if you start your rookie year like Quentin Johnston or Mingo, chances are you're already a bust. I mean, there's not a lot of guys that rebound from that. But there are 2 rookies I've been grabbing like crazy in Dynasty, and AD Mitchell and Jerome Burton. I mean, I'm not drafting them in redraft right now, but I like their ability, and their situation's not bad.
There you go. Matt Williamson's wide receiver rankings part 2. Let us know who's your favorite sleeper. Where did Williamson go wrong in his rankings? At Williamson NFL, at BD Peacock. Get your questions in for this week's mailbag episode as well. You can always drop a question or a comment on YouTube. Matt and I back tomorrow right here. Peacock and Williamson.